Hello, welcome. My name is Tom Hollingsworth, and I am a part of the Gestalt IT network. And today we're going to be having a roundtable discussion around SD-WAN. Out there in the community, in the market, you've probably been hearing the term SD-WAN. You've probably seen a lot of people who are offering SD-WAN solutions. But what you may not know is that SD-WAN is a very complicated thing, and not all solutions for SD-WAN will work with what you want to do. So for a few moments, I want to go ahead and introduce the people who are going to be participating in today's roundtable before we kind of dig into this topic, starting with John.
Hi, my name is John Deegan. I'm primarily a wireless architect, but have been working in networking for the better part of my 20-year IT career. And my Twitter handle is @WiFiJohn_John.
All right, Chris?
Yeah, my name is Chris Grundemann. My background as a network engineer. I helped build a couple small ISPs and did some R&D for the cable industry. And now I work for a company called Myriad 360 that designs cybersecurity and data center infrastructure solutions out of New York City. I also do some writing across the internet, as well as an analyst for GigaOM. And you can find me on Twitter @Chris Grundemann.
All right, and Kishan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kishan Ramaswamy. I'm in the VMware SD WAN product management team. I do lead a few of the product lines within the group itself.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. It sounds like we got some great expertise in the SD-WAN and networking space here. One of the things that I want to jump into, I kind of alluded to in the opening for this this roundtable. SD-WAN is a huge product space. I consider it to be one of the very first things that we really ever came up with that kind of made SDN, software-defined networking, real, because it's solving a problem that has been very difficult to deal with over the years, how to do wide area networking connectivity. And so, when we started out, it was all about trying just to get operational pieces working together. Okay, we're going to run this Ethernet port in here, and we're going to do, certificate-based VPNs to get everything up and running. But over the months and really over the years, we've started to see SD-WAN grow as a product area to start working on different use cases. And that's kind of the focus of this roundtable today, is to help you out there understand that there's no one-size-fits-all SD-WAN solution, but there may be a solution that can fit a lot of different use cases that would be very useful for you. So I want to start off by talking about what you and I would probably consider to be traditional WAN connectivity. That would be, a hub and spoke network where you have one headquarters location and maybe a few branch offices. This is kind of the traditional, the headquarters for the company is in Chicago, but we have offices in Los Angeles and New York and Dallas. And so we need to get all of those connected somehow. And we need to be able to, get them, let them have capabilities. Now, the traditional way that we would do this is we would probably purchase a leased circuit from one of our providers, and we would pay out the nose through it or for it, and then we would hook all that up, and then we would have middling performance and no way to rectify any of that. And I feel like that was really one of the bread and butter reasons why SD-WAN was included. Now, John, what's been your experience trying to connect multiple different offices together?
I mean, going back to my, when I started in networking, 20 some odd years ago, your example fits. I mean, that's how we would do it with everything. We were hooking up, you get a private line or, point-to-point T1 if you were close enough, anything like that. And it was, it was expensive. It worked, but it was expensive, right? And so now, looking at what SD-WAN can do, it definitely, I mean, just taking it at the 30,000 foot view, it adds a tremendous amount of, I think, flexibility, and it promises to add affordability to allow even the smaller organizations to have that connectivity that previously not all that long ago was limited to some of the bigger companies with the really deep pockets that could really warrant investing in that platform, if you will, in that connectivity. So I think it while there's a lot of layers of the onion to get into, SD-WAN, just as a conceptual level, it certainly offers to, I think, level the playing field and sort of change the game, if you will.
Yeah, I would say that's probably pretty fair. And I've been burned many times in my career trying to get those point-to-point T1s to work. You're taking me back to the old days. Now, Chris, you do a lot of research into SD-WAN for the many hats that you wear. What's been your experience with what people would consider to be a traditional SD-WAN? Is it something that a lot of customers are still looking to adopt?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you call traditional, right? I think you did a really good job of describing kind of that legacy traditional model of the hub and spoke, where a company may have a single physical on-premises data center, and then they're connecting a bunch of branch offices to it. And I think one of the driving forces that actually created the market for SD-WAN in the beginning was a move away from that model in many respects. And obviously that's the big C word of cloud, where most folks now are using some form of cloud service at their company, right? And whether that's just their email service or file sharing service, or they're actually going all the way in and like deploying their own applications in some kind of public cloud or even a hybrid or private cloud. There's much more ambiguity in the connectivity and much less control over the network. So even if you wanted to roll out a full MPLS network and kind of connect your physical locations together, that wouldn't work to connect to these SaaS services that are now integral to your enterprise architecture. And so I think that that idea of the traditional WAN has been a bit stepped on, and that was what SD-WAN was an answer to, was allowing you to be able to connect those physical sites as well as the things that you really don't control at all, right? That public cloud stuff, that SaaS stuff, and everything in between.
Yeah, I would say the rise of cloud kind of mirrors SD-WAN, because a lot of it is all focused on performance for users being able to get to resources that they need, whether they're in a headquarters or in an Amazon data center somewhere in Virginia. So that's definitely something that people need to be taking into account. Kishan, you are a part of VMware's SD-WAN product line, and you've probably seen a lot of customers who are looking for this traditional style of SD-WAN connectivity. What are some of the things that VMware SD-WAN can offer to a company that maybe needs to connect a few branch locations to their main headquarters here, say in the US?
Right. It's a big question. So before we go straight away into that answer, I just wanted to lay out some of the things that VMware SD-WAN has done over the years, right? So we've looked at the use case John kind of laid out and the pain points that he faced when we were trying to deploy traditional WAN. We looked at how it can take months together to bring up a site. And VMware SD-WAN went ahead and built technology that allows you to bring up a site within minutes. So we focused from day zero end user experience. We focused around simplifying the entire operations of the network. But what we did beyond just that is to address some of the advanced use cases, whether it's connecting 3 to 4 sites in a regional location, whether it's to access applications that are being accessed from cloud providers. And especially in today's environment, we're seeing more and more applications that are sitting in the cloud, whether you want to access email applications, whether it's accessing security services in the cloud. Cloud becomes a big central focal point in today's environment. So that's where we've built architectures in place, whether it's connecting 3 to 4 sites using our gateway service, whether it is connecting those sites and those users in those sites to the cloud services, again, uses our own VMware SD-WAN fabric, right? So we built in technology that is in place to be able to address all of these use cases in a very simplified manner, and more importantly, keeping the end user experience in mind.
Yeah, I think that that's a huge thing is to keep that end user experience in mind, because far too often creating a technology solution just for the sake of creating cool technology sometimes forgets that there is a living, breathing person on the other end of the line that needs to be able to use that functionality. One of the things that I want to talk about, though, kind of coming back to the original idea behind this, is that there is more that goes into an SD-WAN solution than just, lighting up a couple of offices. We live in a world now that is increasingly global. So that company that has a headquarters in Chicago with offices in, Los Angeles and Dallas now may suddenly find themselves taking on some London offices, or perhaps some offices in Berlin. And so we still need to have those offices and those people connected to our network, and we need to be able to do certain kinds of things with that. And it could even be something as difficult as, well, how do I get all of the traffic from London to the US to access data that's here in the US without incurring additional costs or potentially running into regulatory issues? Chris, is this something that people are starting to see more of in the world where their operations are being globalized?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is definitely, as you said, a trend across the board. More and more companies are operating on a global scale. And not just is it happening, but also there are some significant differences, I think. These kind of remote offices do have different requirements than perhaps, a typical headquarters for sure, or a big campus, or again, a data center. And so, the flexibility and also the robust security become really important. And tying back to, I talked earlier about the, X as a service offerings are really important for a lot of these remote offices, right? Because again, this is the global deployment is even a further step away from that traditional model where, if you go back maybe 15 years, maybe a little less for a lot of people, servers in the closet of the office was, where you were getting your applications served from. And now they're being served from, probably some kind of content delivery network or other, globally distributed SaaS system. And so to tie that into your retail offices really does require this, look at internet connectivity in a new way. And that's another place where I think there's this evolution, especially on a global scale, that, traditionally a lot of folks looked at internet connectivity as a less than service, whereas, they wanted to go for private lease lines or MPLS or something else. And one of the things SD-WAN has really given to us is the ability to look at that, broadband internet service, even if it's not 100% reliable all the time, depending on where you are in the world, it can be used as a mission critical enterprise grade connectivity to these applications that are hosted wherever they may be found.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. It's something that's growing in prevalence. John, have you had any experience setting up any kind of global architecture that could benefit from something like SD-WAN?
I mean, I think we can all draw on something, and especially now with what's going on in the world. SD-WAN, and like Chris said, the idea of having all these different offices in different locations and different requirements, right? You're connecting to different things. You want it to be as seamless as possible. By being able to leverage something like SD-WAN, I wouldn't say it's simple. I don't think technology should be ever oversimplified, but you're shortening the runway considerably. And I think with things like, as we moved people home, even not that we're necessarily treating a home office like a branch office, but in certain cases, maybe you are, because maybe it's the CEO that you need to move with everything, and it basically has enough tech in that place to be a small branch office. The time to stand up that site is in some cases significantly shortened because, as Kishan said, or maybe it was Chris, you really just need that internet connectivity. As long as you've got a reliable network connection, you can configure it and get it running. Whereas opposed to, back in the 90s and 2000s, whenever you were running a private line, you had to work with your ISP, your CO, you had to get the hardware configured on both ends. You were talking about, weeks to get the order in and then days to get the configuration right. And if you were unlucky to be in a small company where you were the same person configuring both ends of the device, it was a pain. So I think that this is a great opportunity for it. It's the timing is really, it's unfortunate what's going on, but I think this is a time where, something that's as flexible, and I would say as scalable as SD-WAN can be. It's been tremendously helpful both for the organization I'm a part of, and I've seen plenty of other peers who I know are pivoting, almost on a daily basis about where things are going. And, as you see more people, it's every day you see something talking about how companies are decentralizing their offices. They're going to, the home office, not the home office, but the HQ, the headquarters is, almost a thing of the past for a lot of people. Being able to provide, corporate connectivity to everywhere you're going to go with relative ease compared to how it was 10 and 15 and 20 years ago, that's significant. So, while I haven't personally built one on a global scale, I've seen enough of them and talked with people enough about them to know that this is definitely something where, as we evolve into the next generation of networks, there's a reason why more and more enterprise customers are looking in that direction. So,
yeah, if I can jump back in there for a second, I think that John touched on something that I kind of glossed over that I think is really important, which is, not just the trend towards more and more global businesses, but the sheer scale of some of the ones that already exist. So we're talking about, hundreds of sites. And again, being able to move from a, global multi-hundred site MPLS network or private lease line network, dedicated from some telco to a set of broadband internet connections, maybe with LTE backups, and be able to do that quickly and for way less money. I mean, I think that's one of the big driving forces of SD-WAN. This is where its scalability does really shine, and its ease of turn up really does shine. So I think I just wanted to kind of double down on what John said there, that these global deployments are really an area where SD-WAN provides a lot of that cost benefit.
Kishan, how's VMware helping with this global SD-WAN deployment? What are some of the features that really kind of can assist the networking people when it comes to trying to solve these difficult challenges?
Absolutely. So a couple of things that I wanted to just maybe summarize based on the conversation between John, Chris, and us, right? If you look at the global WAN, just because of the sheer size of the company, the fact that you're geographically spread out, you're going to have few regional sites, or you're going to definitely have regional sites. You're going to have branch offices that connect to these regional sites, and these regional sites will start connecting back to HQs. So you're going to have more of a hierarchical organization. Now, when you have such an organization, the requirements at each layer kind of change in the sense that redundancy becomes a very important factor, especially in the regional offices, because you have these many sites connecting into that. Similarly, the throughput and performance that you need to address at a HQ level or the data center levels are way higher than what you would expect at the client, at the branch offices. So as you start laying out the global WAN, you have to have products that address all of these requirements. And I really liked what Chris said. Look, at the end branches, you might need LTE backup depending upon the type of site. So that's the beauty of, again, if I look at VMware SD-WAN, we've got products that addresses all of these different layers. You want to build redundancy, you've got one of the most simplest architecture in the world where you don't have to necessarily, have 2 times the amount of equipment per site trying to create a fully meshed redundant architecture. This is where I go back to our VeloCloud gateways, VCGs that are deployed globally, that are hosted for customers, where you can actually send your traffic to the gateways that are hosted, and then they can carry your traffic further across to the rest of the organization. That helps with just that. On the branch side, you have LTE devices. We've got platforms that scale from anywhere from a 200 Mbps all the way to 10 gigs. So you choose the platform that you need, right? We have clustering capability that gets you much higher bandwidth. So starting from the platform layer, being able to provide access, the means of communication, whether it's internet, whether it's broadband, whether it's LTE, we give you that flexibility. Then you all have the redundancy architecture. Lastly, just one more point I wanted to make. Across such a large organization, given that, again, we touched upon the applications, it can be distributed in different cloud providers. How do you ensure, can I go back to that end user experience, that when I'm accessing a O365 from from a cloud, how do I know that the latency is low? Or if I'm accessing that unified access application, which is very time sensitive, how can I be assured that it falls within the acceptable range of jitter, delay, and packet loss? How can I remediate this traffic if I experience poor link conditions? This is where we've got our secret sauce. We call that dynamic multipath optimization. VMware SD-WAN comes with that built in, and that's where we improve the end user experience.
Yeah, I think that continuing to optimize those little things and multipath being a huge deal is going to be something that a lot of people are going to have to figure out. I mean, one of the things I've noticed working from home for the last few months, like a lot of us have been, is that all it takes is an outage somewhere along my path to cause a huge problem for me being able to work. But people in the other part of my organization that aren't taking the same path may not necessarily see that. And when you grow to the size of a global organization, that just gets exacerbated on a regular basis because, well, just because the undersea network cable went down doesn't mean that we can't work, but it may mean that part of our office can't. So one of the other things that we want to talk about, and Chris kind of alluded to this, there's another use case for SD-WAN that has been really growing, and that actually is cloud. As more and more applications and more people are starting to store programs and data in the cloud, it's no longer important for my remote users to have to connect back to the home office through a VPN to access their mail client or their database application. Now everything just goes to the cloud. And so SD-WAN has really been driving these kinds of deployments as well, because there are a lot of things that SD-WAN includes that has the capability of enhancing the users there. Now, John, how is it that users at home or possibly in remote offices are spending more and more time getting on the cloud?
In terms of what they're doing, or you know, how they're doing it, you know,
A little bit of both. I mean, you know, what is different about accessing your applications and things in an Amazon data center versus doing it on premises?
so I mean, for me personally, the biggest change is, you know, I don't have to carry around those wonderful RSA key fobs anymore. I don't miss logging into the VPNs as much. I still occasionally do, and we've got one of the, you know, we use like the always on VPNs that take the guesswork out of it. But I mean, it's all on how it's configured, right? You've got applications, you know, it's the software defined part of it, right? There's pieces everywhere along the path that, you know, they make sure you know who you are and you're supposed to be able to talk to those particular resources. But it's the nice thing, and I think, you know, it's been touched upon by a few people on the call. It's the usability to the end user. And so there's really two end users, right? There's the network engineers that have to handle this, but there's the end users that are actually consuming it. And thinking about it from an end user perspective, for me, like, just to be able to open up my phone and I've got the applications I want to hit, and maybe it's in AWS, maybe it's in Google, maybe it's wherever, to be able to do that and not have to always have that key fob on me and not always have to, you know, type it in, or maybe it's a, you know, a software on my phone that's giving me a token code that I've got to, you know, it's my two-factor authentication or whatever. It's the convenience of it, right? The downside is we're probably working a little bit more now than, well, even before, because it's just so readily available and convenient. But that convenience is huge because, you know, you don't have to deal with the pain. I mean, I remember way back when I started setting up, you know, hardware-based VPNs for small offices, and people were ripping their hair out because they were like, I don't know how to configure. Can I bring my laptop into the work, you know, to work tomorrow? And can you help me? Can you show me how to do it? And it was just like, you know, I'm in IT, it's not that hard, but I get the frustration. And now it's basically like, if you can open up a browser and hit, you know, a URL, you're in. You know, you hit your username and password. Maybe you've got two-factor if the organization's set up that way. It makes that end user so much more comfortable because it's just that much more streamlined. You know, sure, there's security. I know Chris touched on it. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the back end. So for the network administrators, there's still plenty of work to be done. It's just different work and necessarily different places where it's happening, especially if you're dealing with the cloud. It's the old joke of it's just somebody else's computer. But, you know, the facing the actual end user, the actual customer, is the part where I think that the benefit is it's huge. I think it's seamless, right? It doesn't matter where you sit. It doesn't matter where you work. Wherever you need to be is your corporate office, or can be your corporate office, as everything is set up right.
Chris, you've done a lot of research in SD-WAN, as we mentioned earlier, and you were the one who brought up the cloud focus early as well. What are you seeing with regards to, you know, cloud being enabled by SD-WAN?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. And as I said, I do think that in many ways, the move towards cloud, especially if we consider software as a service things as cloud, it was a genesis of SD-WAN. And I also do think that you're right that SD-WAN now may be also helping drive cloud adoption. And what I mean is, you know, I think there's a bit of a symbiotic relationship there. And the difference is between, you know, maybe folks who have added cloud over time, and that required them to change the way they looked at their WAN, versus a lot of the new companies or new departments within companies that are really born cloud first, right? Or cloud native, as some folks talk about. And what that means to me is just more and more functionality and more services moving into the cloud. You know, all the way down to, you know, John just mentioned security again. And I think that's one thing that, you know, some folks have moved security into the cloud instead of having, you know, physical firewalls at the edge. They're doing a lot of that security in the cloud because they're moving all of their traffic through that anyway. It's also an area that I think VMware SD-WAN really shines with their cloud gateways and the kind of on-ramps into a lot of different clouds. That's something that's really impressed me with their deployments, in this kind of ability to really look at that kind of cloud native worldview and know that that's really the primary destination for a lot of traffic, right? So I think that is interesting. And I think that, you know, if we were still tied to those, you know, old premise-based physical circuits, it would be a lot harder for companies to be as flexible in moving things into the cloud as they are today with more of an SD-WAN type approach.
All right. Now, Kishan, VMware's SD-WAN solution does have a lot of heritage when it comes to cloud connectivity and things like that. And of course, with this being a growing use case for potential customers, it's something you definitely want to keep on top of. How are you helping users and organizations start this cloud-first movement when it comes to enabling networking?
And this goes back to the thought leadership that VMware SD-WAN had right from the inception of the product. If you look back and see, the only company to have thought about moving networking into the cloud, and that was VMware SD-WAN. So starting from that itself, from that point, you see we leapfrogged and we've had the ability to go in and start leveraging our networking in the cloud, which is our gateways in the cloud, and be able to create that automatic setup between different cloud providers. If you look at cloud, we traditionally look at cloud as IaaS vendors, we look at cloud as SaaS vendors, but today the cloud vendors have themselves evolved, right? You have the security clouds, mid-mic clouds, analytics clouds, and of course the SaaS clouds, etc. So just being able to use our VeloCloud gateways to automate connectivity, simplify access to these cloud providers is how we provide those services to all of these different, to our different customers. Right, so that's already baked into our SD-WAN product.
All right, and for those of you who are listening at home, VeloCloud is the product line that was acquired by VMware that is now known as VMware SD-WAN. So if you hear references to those, know that they're one and the same. I think one of the things that's come up in the course of this discussion during the roundtable is that you need to understand your needs for your WAN. Are you doing something more traditional? Are you doing something that has a global reach? Are you doing something focused on the cloud, or possibly even another potential scenario? There are a lot of different ways to connect devices with a WAN, and no WAN size fits all. So when you're doing your investigative work, you need to know what you have to have connected. You need to know how you need to connect it, and you need to know what your users are going to need to be accessing, whether it's in a headquarters, another country, or another data center somewhere in the cloud. If you can put that requirements list together and you can determine what's more important for your people, you will be able to have a good head start on making a selection for an SD-WAN solution. And based on what you've heard here today, I don't think you can go wrong with picking VMware SD-WAN, because they have a lot of the tools and technology that you're going to need to streamline the deployment process for your users and your engineers. And the happier you can make those folks, the easier your life is going to be. Kishan, if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about VMware's SD-WAN solutions, where's the best place for them to go to find out about it?
So to learn more about some of the technologies that we've discussed today, you can just visit velocloud.com. We have a lot of blogs that are posted up there. There's a link to contacting us, and you can get in touch with us through that website.
All right, thank you, Kishan. We want to thank all of the panelists who participated today and provided their insights and expertise when it comes to SD-WAN. You will be able to learn a little bit more about this technology and some of the use cases that are important to you. If you head over to gestaltit.com, you can learn more about that. As Kishan mentioned, you can also head to velocloud.com to see use cases and technology solutions and get more information. For myself, Tom Hollingsworth, and for our great panelists, and for the folks at VMware, thank you very much for joining us today. And we look forward to having another great roundtable discussion with you in the future.